me. Welcome to a moon-filled night of strange and wondrous tales of ancient kings and mystic rings and ships with painted sails, of how I came to be here and where I wish to go, and all my deepest secrets which you will come to know, and all my deepest secrets which you will come to know.
Work from a science experiment that we had earlier a few months ago. Please rise now in body or spirit, wherever and whenever you may be, for the singing of our hymn of invocation and the recitation of our congregational covenant. The words to both will appear on your screen, or if you want to sing along using your hymnal, the hymn is number 123, Spirit of Life. By this covenant, we affirm that
love is the spirit of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
All right. So today we're going to have a Time for All Ages in two parts, one of which is in the guise of a people on the street interview, where we're going to hear from our young people about their own experiences of worship. For that part, I would actually like to invite all of our young people to come forward and sit in the much coveted choir spaces over here. If you just come on up and just find a place, not too far away, because you're going to talk to me in a microphone. It's going to be exciting, very exciting. Okay. So I'm going to move over there. And then after we do this part, we're going to actually, we're going to move to the back, where we are going to sort of kick off our RA time with a maypole dance. The maypole is actually in the back, so that the folks who are on Zoom can actually see the dance most fully. And so we're going to, everyone in the sanctuary is going to turn and look towards the back, so like all of our Zoom joiners can also see your faces instead of the backs of your heads. So we're all going to join together in the maypole dance in this way. I do want to say just a word of thanks before we do that to Steph Tacey and Jackie Drake, who were so kind as to bring me flowers from home to crown the maypole. Now, if you look at the maypole, there is not currently a crown. Not because they did not give generously, but because I really just couldn't figure out how to staple it to the top. So there are flowers that we put in a vase that you can see outside that are the beautiful crown of the maypole, just in a certain disembodied kind of way. So. Good morning. Has anyone ever seen a people on the street interview? No, okay. So the concept is, I'm the nightly news anchor, and I decide I want to know what people on the street think about something, and I go out to the street and I stop random passerbys, and I'm like, excuse me, would you give me an interview? And then you make it on the nightly news. I mean, this is way funnier when it's like a late show variety, right? But this is what we're going to do. So the church, that's all of us, have been in the process of reimagining worship. And we did these polls, and we took some opinions, and we asked some folks to come to a retreat. And did any of you take those polls? By show of hands, did any of you take that poll? Oh. Did any of you attend the day-long retreat? Oh. I knew the answer to that, sorry. So, as we are talking about how we reimagine worship, we actually want all of you to be involved because you are part of who and how we worship together. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want your first and honest answers. Does that feel like something you can do? Maybe. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay. All right. Does anyone have a very exciting memory of something you've done in worship at this church? All right, here we go. Share.
It was
Close to the mic.
it was a while ago, but it was like when I was 6, I think, or something. Like, and they had the water slide out there, and that was really, really fun.
Wow, we had a water slide in worship. Y'all rock. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Any other exciting memory of worship here that we would like to share, that you would like to share? Anyone? Okay. That's okay. That doesn't mean they're not there. Just means we can't think of them right now in this interview. It's okay. All right, so here's another thought. When you think about when you come to worship, what is your favorite part of actual worship? Like, is it the singing? Is it the chalice lighting? Is it the candles? Like, what is your favorite part? All right, here we go. Start with you.
My favorite part is the chalice lighting.
Chalice lighting, excellent. Okay, go ahead.
My favorite part is the chalice lighting.
Okay, lots of big fans of the chalice lighting. Anything in the back row? No, that's okay. Do you have something you'd like to share?
I do.
All right, come on, in the mic.
I like our chalice lighting, but I love everyone.
The people, okay.
Mike.
Okay. Here we go. Yeah, can you repeat that?
Mike.
Mike, okay. The microphone. This part is exciting. The microphone. All right, here we go. Close to the mic.
The singing.
The thing.
The singing.
The singing. Okay. So that's the. I can't really hear right now, everyone, because I'm getting over these ear infections. So, sorry. All right. So, if you could add anything to worship, this is our last question. So think about it. If you could add anything, like if you could put something in worship that would make it cool, that would excite you, that you would want, what would it be? All right, we're going to start in the back row and come forward this time.
Somewhere to eat afterwards.
All right. Libby, you want to take a stab? No, it's okay. Give it to Kate. Oh, yes.
Play freeze tag every time we come here.
Say again.
Play freeze tag every time we come here.
At a halftime show.
All right. Excellent ideas abound. All right, so thank you all for your willingness to participate in our People on the Street interviews. As a note, on May 15th, after church, we will have food. So, what? Right, if you bring it, then you can come. That's how that goes. Okay, so there is announcements about that here in the packet in the back. So if you want to know more about May 15th, here's how to find it. Okay, so now a challenge to all of you. We're about to go and we're going to dance our maypole in the back. There are 12 locations on our maypole, 12 exciting spots. It's very simple. We will dance in one direction till we braid the maypole. Are there any young people who didn't come up but that do want to dance our maypole? All right. Then that means I need 6 volunteers who might be willing, well, in addition to all of you. I've already counted you as 6. The 6 of you count, okay? Means I need 6 other volunteers who might want to dance the maypole. All right, head to the back. All right, let's head to the back. And go ahead and let's move it kind of to the center, everyone. Move it to the center so there's space to dance around it. It's okay. It's just it's a mop handle, so we're not going to break it, I promise. All right. Everyone's going to take a string. Be ready. Find a string, everyone. Everyone gets one string. All right. Here we go. Does everyone have a string? We need one more. I think we have a volunteer. Okay. Now, everyone face left. Okay, so this is it. We dance in a circle until we've dressed our pole, okay? Does that make sense? All right. Lead us in, Les. There we go. everyone. There we go. Yay! All right. Thank you. Thank you, adult volunteers. Now we are going to sing our children's recessional while we go out to our RE classes. Any of you who might not have, any of our young people who are here, who might not have joined in these other festivities, please do join us in the rest of the sanctuary outside if you are interested for the rest of our programming.
That took a little more time than usual, so we had to sing it twice. Maybe they were having fun. Maybe they didn't want to leave. So something just changed. Something changed in the last few seconds. Remember that song we often sing with the line, "Don't be afraid of some change"? Well, for the next few minutes, I'm going to ask you to think about change as we reflect together on the evolution of worship. But first, I think it might be a good idea for you to take a couple of slow, deep breaths. Because for the next few minutes, I hope to change your perspective on a few things, or at least to offer you some new perspectives to consider. As I said, something just changed. What was it? Anybody? The kids left the energy in the room. I would suggest that both of those are right, that the kids did leave and the energy in the room just changed. At least that's what changed where I am, where and when you are, if you're here with me in the sanctuary, at Heritage Church at 10:54 a.m. on Sunday morning, May 1st, in the year 2022 of the so-called Common Era in Cincinnati, Ohio, USA, planet Earth, solar system, and so on. But let's take a different perspective. Let's change just one variable in that list I just gave. What changed for the people that are out in the Great Hall, watching and listening to this worship service out there and in real time? Well, the children didn't leave where they were. The children arrived where they were, actually passed through where they were. It was a whole different experience out there when the children came in and went through. Here they left the room, there they came into the room. Now, if you're watching and listening to this service from somewhere other than the Heritage Church building, perhaps not quite as much changed. I suspect the camera angle changed away from the maypole to the pulpit. A few things changed, but it wasn't quite as profound. Maybe the energy that Ellie referred to was not something that you felt changing. You were watching a video, and perhaps you're able to imagine in your mind's eye the kids walking into the sanctuary, into the Great Hall and passing through the Great Hall. But maybe you've never even been to Heritage Church, so at least a physical location, so it might be harder for you to imagine where the kids are right now. And then there's that word now. Maybe just perhaps you are watching or listening or both to this worship service a few days or weeks or years or decades in the future. Those children are certainly somewhere else now. Maybe they're not even children now. Maybe they're grown up. Maybe some of them, some of us, I who am speaking to you now, Maybe some of us aren't even alive whenever now is for the person watching in the future. I offer everyone this thought exercise as something of an entry point into our consideration of the topic du jour, the evolution of worship, because it really, really has evolved lately. For one thing, it has almost literally become timeless. Now remember, I did encourage you to take a couple of deep breaths. So speaking of time, I think it's safe to say that way back in the year 1632, when Puritan preacher John Cotton began his ministry in North America, having fled here from England for the typical reasons of religious persecution, such considerations were the furthest thing from his mind. When he preached about something being timeless, I'm pretty sure he meant something entirely different. Cotton could never have imagined and probably would have considered it the work of the devil, the kind of worship that we are doing right now. So yes, Virginia, worship has evolved, and that's just in our own American Unitarian Universalist lineage. By the way, it might surprise you to know that we are religious descendants of the Puritans. Talk about an evolution in worship. You chuckle because you can't imagine. You can imagine in your mind's eye Puritan worship. You can picture that. You can think about that. Maybe even you can think about worship a couple of centuries after that. What it must have been like in the new congregation called the First Universalist Society of Cincinnati. There were long by our standards today, sermons, always by white men, of course, all based on biblical passages and focused on sin and salvation. That's our church too. Maybe it's a bit easier since you can see it in front of you, or at least since most of you can see it. Imagine 19th and early 20th century worship around this altar, where we now have a flaming chalice. It is flaming. There was a little trouble with that earlier. We have a Tibetan gong, and we light candles of community. But at this table for generations, our congregational ancestors took Christian communion. What they did each Sunday was certainly called worship, as it had been for centuries, but it differed in significant ways from what we do now. And it differed even a bit from when I arrived here 20 years ago. Did you know that back then there was a group called the Program Committee who planned the Sunday morning programs? They were not 20 years ago called worship. That too is a change in perspective. And believe me, it was challenging in my first couple of years as your minister to help the congregation once again think of what takes place here on Sunday mornings, what we're doing together here today as something sacred, something spiritual, something more than a program, as worship. Think as well of some other changes and evolutions to worship that have taken place just in our own cultural context. Universalists were the first to ordain women to the ministry. Yet more than 100 years passed from that milestone to the 1980s, when Heritage finally called its first female minister. Then consider that as the 20th century ended, a majority of UU ministers were women, the first religious denomination in the United States where that was true. The evolution of worship. And the pace of that evolution continues to pick up here in the 21st century, as does the pace of everything else. It was just a dozen years ago that All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma became one of the early adopters of live streaming their worship services. Of course, we at Heritage, like probably many other UU churches, were on the other end of that spectrum. Late adopters, forced into the modern era of digital worship by a deadly microscopic virus. But adopt and adapt, we did. COVID, it seems, made us begin to think outside the box. Now, those of you here in the sanctuary will recognize this image from the cover of your program. But I also wanted those who are on Zoom and in the future to see this image too. Friends, we've entered an era when thinking outside the box on matters ranging from church worship to climate change will be necessary not just to thrive, but to survive. You'll notice that in the traditional game of tic-tac-toe shown here, it was a draw, a stalemate. There was no winner. But by going outside the box, the X's were able to win. Or were they? In this image, which is new both to those here in the sanctuary and to those online, it is the O's who have won by thinking outside the box. You see, there are multiple ways to think outside the box, and everyone can be a winner. The key is to do what? Think outside the box. In our case, for the purposes of this discussion this morning, the box is how we worship at Heritage. I've already alluded to a few ways in which we have worshiped differently over the past 195 years of this congregation's lifespan. And in that time frame, I'm sure every so often we've come to a point where we got boxed in and needed to break out, break free, try new things for a new era. This is one of those times.
Morning. I'm Regina Pugh, and if you've been at Heritage for pretty much any amount of time greater than being new today, you know I am the person that coordinates our Heritage tradition of designating the contents of our weekly offering plate to a nonprofit doing work beyond our walls. Our outreach offerings have been well supported, and I receive a lot of positive feedback about the opportunity to pool our resources into a gift that is greater than what we may be able to afford as individuals. Of course, in most churches, including this one in prior years, the contents of the plate go to support the church. And there's always been a little sarcastic voice in my head saying, how manipulative is that? Let's make giving a public thing, and then while we're at it, maybe tell some stories about praising a widow for giving all she had. And if you don't know that story, it's a rather popular one from the Bible known as the widow's mite, where indeed the widow gave everything she had. I doubt any of you ever think you have to give all the money that you have to our offering or pledge it to the church. But I sometimes do wonder if the arrival of the plate to some hands each Sunday causes a little anxiety. Perhaps you want to give, but you don't have any cash. And after the past 2 years, we've got out of the habit of carrying it. Perhaps you don't find the week's recipient very compelling. Perhaps you donate regularly to your own chosen organizations, or perhaps you literally can't afford to put anything in the plate. If we want to be a congregation where everyone feels truly welcome, that also means being a safe place for those that might be the very population our outreach is trying to serve. So today, we're just going to try a little experiment. If you have some cash, or if you like to use your phone to donate, the monetary contents of today's plate will go to a youth-led volunteerism nonprofit called Do Something. They encourage teens and young adults to create or join volunteer campaigns that have included things like Get the Filter Out, in which over 3 million cigarette butts were picked up, collected, and disposed of properly. Jeans for Teens had 5 million pairs of jeans donated, and Take Back the Prom helps communities create gender-inclusive proms. Zero Crash Future is a current campaign to help stop distracted driving. If you have teens or college-age people in your life, I encourage you to introduce them to the website, dosomething.org, and explore the many available campaigns they can join. And if you are willing and able, support Do Something with a gift today. I also encourage you to think about how you already offer your love and support to the world and to Heritage, or how you might plan to do so in the future. You were given a little slip of paper as you came in today to write a love offering or even a love pledge on. And you're welcome to put these in the plate today as it passes, if you choose. I will share them out on the bulletin board out in the hallway. You can put your name on it or not. I want everyone to have the opportunity to read and enjoy all the way our church community offers love and support. And if you're in our virtual community today, the chat is open. You can put things into chat too if you like. Maybe you're in a place today where you particularly need to receive some love instead of give. Let the passing of the plate through your hands infuse you with the love that is the spirit of this church. I'm going to wait just a few moments into the offertory to hand the plates off, so you have a little bit of time to write an offering if you haven't done that already. If you choose not to, you can just enjoy Les's playing for a while. The morning's offering will be gratefully received. Thank you for all the gifts that you give in all the ways that you give them. We have two readings to share with you this morning. The first is titled, Hold Out Your Hand by Julia Fehrenbacher. Let's forget the world for a while. Fall back and back into the hush and holy of now. Are you listening? This breath invites you to write the first word of your new story. Your new story begins with this: you matter. You are needed, empty and naked, willing to say yes, and yes, and yes. Do you see? The sun shines day after day, whether you have faith or not. The sparrows continue to sing their song, even if you forget to sing yours. Stop asking, am I good enough? Ask only, am I showing up with love? Life is not a straight line. It's a downpour of gifts. Please, hold out your hand.
The second reading is titled Allow and is by Dana Falls. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt or containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. But allow and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in. The wild and the weak, the fear and the fantasies, your failure and your successes. When loss rips off the doors of your heart or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice simply becomes bearing and bearing witness to the truth. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your eyes. I hope those two poems have set the stage for what will be something new and exciting for us at Heritage today. A virtual reflection. Speaking to us live now from her home via the magic of Zoom, here is Laura Rue Shaw. Everybody wave at Laura. Laura, it's yours.
Okay. Well, all I have to say is I'm really glad I can't see exactly how massive my head is on that wall. Talk about new ways of being. Another new way of being for me is, even though I've been speaking in church since I was barely a tween, I used to be better at memorizing and not having to read as much of what I said, but I'm gonna have to rely a little more on my papers today. So I'll get to that in just a minute though, okay? So if you didn't get Bill's introduction, good morning. I am Laura Rue Shaw, and I am a member of Heritage Church. Along with my husband, Nathan, we joined Heritage just about a year BC, before COVID. So I realize that many of you may never have met me, as my primary mode of attendance and participation of in the life of this church has been virtually or at the annual women's retreat. This morning, I want to share with you a little bit of perspective, which that experience gives me as a member of this congregation and this worshiping community. In fact, I served on the worship committee for a short time at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were just switching to Zoom worship services. The learning curve was steep for all of us. How could we incorporate folks who were not in the same space and place into a worshiping community that was as inclusive and connected as possible during a time of radical disconnection? Given my worship committee experience during the early days of COVID, and as a virtual attendee during the ensuing year or two, I was invited to attend our recent Reimagining Worship retreat. My role, among others, was to bring a different perspective to the conversations and the planning. As Reverend Bill has said, change is happening, and that's not always comfortable. This brings to mind a phrase from last week's worship, quoted by Bill Lyon, which got its start in journalism, but is also popular in churches. Our purpose is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. This seems a perfect summation of our process of reimagining worship. At the retreat, we had to ask ourselves if we had grown too comfortable with the way things were pre-pandemic. We had to acknowledge that our attempts at managing it all with a worship committee were valiant, but simply no longer working out as well as it once did. Zoom gave us what many had hoped was a quick, ad hoc fix to our pandemic shutdown problems. That said, as someone with a degree in English literature, it seems to me that in COVID-19, the cosmos granted us a heavy dose of Deus ex machina with a generous side helping of in medias res. In other words, for seemingly interminable months, our spiritual connection depended heavily on an all-powerful machine, a God in the machine. And we were all begrudgingly grateful for it. Whether it was your tablet, computer, or phone, God or not God was coming to you via circuit boards. And then there was in medias res, to begin in the middle. I can promise you the early days of chaos we all experienced as we integrated worship technology felt very much like beginning in the middle. Maybe in the middle of an IKEA assembly project where someone had lost the directions. Excuse me. But we did plow through, and there was worship, often good worship, as we met virtually each and every Sunday. An ever-shrinking group of very hardworking volunteers found a rhythm, and things began to feel steadier for all. I personally loved the brief time I was able to work with the worship committee. But just as we were about to make our first attempts to rejoin for in-person worship, I was experiencing the combined challenges of having a post-COVID body. I had come down with COVID early on, and the brain fog was becoming intense enough and persisted for long enough that I was afraid I was going to make a critical or fatal patient error. So I retired from nursing. My body's unique quirks, by the time you get your 6th autoimmune condition, you have to start coming up with cute names for them. And had made my symptoms more unmanageable, and my stamina was wildly unpredictable. Some weeks, rolling over flat in bed made me dizzy enough to vomit. Some weeks, I could get to the bathroom, but not without nearly passing out. Some weeks, I passed out multiple times and collected a series of head traumas. My genetic heart disease and history of latent tuberculosis acquired from a patient meant that even when I could get and stay vertical, I was a horrible risk for another COVID infection. Portable oxygen, which I'm wearing now, makes my masks wildly less effective. And about the only thing I can do to stay safe is stay home. For how long? I too am eagerly awaiting the answer we all seek. This congregation has long been engaged in conversations about diversity, which recently have become even more focused, with discussions about changes to Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. It comes naturally for us to discuss issues related to social justice, racial inequality, and so on. We are comfortable thinking about socioeconomic diversity, and we even acknowledge the apparent lack of diversity in our congregation from week to week. These issues are part of our core values and were naturally discussed during the Reimagining Worship retreat. The reason I'm speaking to you from my bed this morning on Zoom is that this platform can accommodate my health, my body, and my symptoms. Maybe you had not considered that there are two types of diversity needs that Zoom meets, and you are already surrounded by. During our conversations on diversity, we, and frankly, the whole gosh darn world, tend to forget both neurodiversity and hidden disabilities. I've been neurodiverse my whole life, and I've used adaptive techniques, such as reading from my notes, knitting during service, standing and pacing during long lectures, using a fidget tool, or broadcasting the church service from multiple devices in multiple rooms, so that when I forget that I meant to go get breakfast, but now I have to walk the dog, I can still participate in church worship. Odd as it may look to my neighbors, I can be heard saying out loud, "Love is the spirit of this church," from my front yard, my screened-in porch, my bed with the window open on mornings when that's all I can manage. Cognitively, we are not all wired the same. And Zoom helps give not only members like me, but perhaps even more critically, the parents of children who are neurodiverse, the accommodations we so richly deserve. Likewise, physical disabilities can be obvious, or less so. A proudly worn parabolic lower limb prosthetic clearly deserves a handicapped parking space. That's a no-brainer. But what if you catch me on a good day in a short errand where I've left my oxygen at home and merely want to pick up first aid supplies at Walgreens? Unless I'm standing for too long, you might never know that the list of conditions which contributes to my hidden disability status is long enough to rival the Old Testament's list of begats. There are, of course, many ways our heritage worship experience could be made more accessible. But at the very top of that list is the continued availability of digital worship experiences. You haven't heard it, folks. I'm here to tell you, since the pandemic, the disability and diversity communities have seen just what the world is capable of offering in terms of accommodation. And we are not willing to go back to the way it was. All of a sudden, we realize we can work from home, have reduced commutes, or even have a workspace set up which truly meets our individual needs. That's an amazing gift to have come out of this whole pandemic mess. I look forward to the next time I can worship with you in person. Although, to be honest, it will probably be a mixed blessing, since it'll mean I've just recovered from my most recent bout of COVID, and I'm in that sweet spot of as protected as I'll get and not contagious with a negative test. It didn't take the Reimagining Worship Retreat to remind me that my future with heritage would be a shadow of its former self if digital resources weren't to continue. And I hate the idea of trying to find worship experiences from other churches if we should falter in our digital offerings. Right now, being able to join heritage and its digital services, it's my spiritual lifeblood, just as much as the women's retreat and the changing seasons are throughout the year. As a bit of trivia, the 1918 influenza epidemic gave us the powder room, a designated spot architects created so visitors might immediately wash their hands before entering a home. I'm willing to bet that Nathan and I aren't the only ones who still have a bottle of hand sanitizer and spare masks near their door. And that will remain the case for quite some time. just as we can easily see the utility of a powder room. I invite you to see heritages being thrust into the digital age, not as a rough and painful process, but as a timely and useful bridge to our future. Many churches are experiencing aging populations and declines in membership. A decade or two ago, a church's primary calling card was its website, with an About Us section, directions for first-time visitors, and maybe mention of a recorded sermon section in the library. Just remember that the generations to follow will have wildly different expectations about church in ways we can't even predict. But getting involved in digital ministry now will help us see ways to stay relevant as a congregation well into the 21st century. We aren't really the proselytizing type, but we sure do value service as our prayer. The more people we serve, and the more diverse those whom we serve become, the louder our prayer will ring. Thank you. Back to you guys.
And, you know, I'm doing it right in the mic, and y'all can join me. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, amen. May that prayer ring loudly now and in the months and years to come. And as Laura said, the generations that follow will have different expectations of worship. Maybe one of them is a halftime show. I will point out that although we are a little beyond halftime in this service, there are other worship traditions where we would be at halftime, or maybe even not quite at halftime in the service. Different ways to worship. So here's our halftime show. Andrea Dale, you're the halftime show. We asked for Beyonce. She couldn't be here, but by golly, Andrea's better.
I told Bill there'd be a little bit of an intro for this because when he asked me to find songs, find one where you reimagined yourself, and I'm like, and I began looking through my material, and I found a song that I wrote in 1993 that is still true. It's about the awkwardness we feel when we choose to change, when we go someplace new. It reminded me of when I first came to Heritage, to imagine of what it would be like for my family with two neurodiverse children to be for the first time part of a church community. And I think something for us to think about is when we have new people join us virtually, is to start finding those places for those coffee conversations after church and before church. Because I'll tell you, when I came here, I was in the coffee shop afterwards, and this song talks about exactly how I felt. And I still feel this way. And this song was written 27 years ago. And I say, I don't feel this now, but I feel this every time I go someplace new. So part of what I'm saying is if you're feeling awkward, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Awkward often means new, and awkward usually means courage. But it still doesn't mean you don't show there and go up and say, can I belong? Do I fit? Am I in tune? I don't want to know, because it's a little bit late. I am your awkward friend, a bit too eager tad too shy. I am only lonely and just standing by. Won't you please see through this awkward facade? Ignore my blunders and silence. I am vainly trying to convey my longing for acceptance as who I am today. I am your awkward friend, a bit too eager, a tad too shy. I am only lonely and just standing by. Won't you please see through this awkward facade? Unsure and listening for openers, you all seem to know each one so well. I'll start to figure out. I've started doing the chords for the chorus. I'll start to carve out my spot and begin to shed my shell. You are my awkward friend, a bit too eager, a tad too shy. You are only lonely and just standing by. Won't I please see through your awkward facade? Won't I please see through your awkward facade?
Thank you, Andrea. Folks, Laura and Andrea have both given us a lot to think about. So let's do that now, in a time in the service that is very special to many of us. Others might find it a little awkward because we got different styles and different types. But let's be silent for a moment. Just think about some of the things that have come across our experience in the past hour. May we honor the spirit of life in each and in all. Amen.
voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
One of the things that became perfectly clear to us at the Reimagining Worship Retreat and through lots of other feedback we've received is that we've lost something over the time of the pandemic when it comes to candles of community. And so today we will partially return to the treasured format that many of you have indicated has been profoundly missed during the pandemic. This morning, for the first time in more than 2 years, those of you who are here in the sanctuary will be able to share your joys and sorrows with the in-person and virtual congregation live here at the historic altar, much the way we used to do it for decades. Now, if you can applaud, I feel it, I see it. If you're on Zoom, you'll still be able to offer your joys and sorrows in the chat at the appropriate time. And if you emailed your request in prior to today's service, or if you wrote it in the candle book, those being our most recent habits. But if you're here and you'd rather come to the altar, do that. We're going to do that first. If I see that you've already shared your candle, I won't read it, right? As each candle is spoken, Regina will light a candle, so that's a little bit different. But you'll be able to speak. Let's begin with those persons who are in the sanctuary right here. And as I used to say all the time, if you'll line up along either wall and prepare to come up, and then come up when Regina indicates, when she hands you the mic, say your name and what is in your heart. And while people are lining up and kind of queuing, I am going to share the first candle. And if we have any left, we light one final candle for those joys and sorrows that remain unexpressed but are in our hearts today. So just a quick recap. This morning we've returned to candles of community at our altar. We have done so in true Universalist fashion, opening this ritual up for everyone, for all to share their joys and sorrows. We have heard and seen a reflection given virtually on Zoom and streamed into the sanctuary from afar. I'm sure this will become a more frequent occurrence in the future. If if you can think back far enough, done a little maypole dance here in the sanctuary. And it tickles me to think what that Puritan preacher John Cotton might have thought about that. We've also enjoyed and been inspired by live music. We have sung from our hymnals and while following along with words on a screen or a wall. We have shared silence. We have thought about other ways besides the giving of money that we can share from our abundance with the world of which we are a part. We explored different learning styles and considered diverse and divergent ways of being in that world and in worship together. All the while, we have maintained our cherished traditions and liturgical landmarks, those things that ground us and center us and make us feel a sense of comfort and continuity with the past, and will continue to, I am sure, in the future. Like everything else in our world, worship is changing, but that doesn't mean it cannot continue to bring us together in beloved community. In the weeks and months ahead, you may see some more changes, but I hope you will also notice those familiar elements that are grounding and the ways in which you might find yourself feeling closer to others because of the changes or the traditions. Throughout it all, may our circle still continue to widen. And finally, I have faith, complete and utter faith that, as has always been the case, love will be woven like a golden thread through all of what we do, connecting and comforting, helping and healing us as we continue to learn and grow together. May the embrace of that love and this beloved community hold you now and throughout all your days. Namaste and amen. Please rise in body or spirit one final time. And now I'm having a mental image of Laura at home, maybe on her deck singing so the neighbors can hear. Our final hymn, number 368, let us sing. Now, if you're here in the sanctuary, you're going to want to take out your hymnals. Everybody's looking at the wall. It's not going to be there. Take out your hymnals and turn to number 368. It's old school. However, if you're on Zoom, you're going to see a picture of that hymnal page on your screen. Let's sing now. Hymn number 368. Watching these people. Maybe next time we'll have you turn around so Zoomers can watch you do this. All right, a quick reminder, following the benediction and the extinguishing of the chalice, you're welcome to take a quick bio break, stretch your limbs, visit the restroom, go outside for a quick breath of fresh air, but then please return to the sanctuary in about 5 minutes for a very important town hall meeting to discuss next year's church budget. This conversation will impact not only our facility and the programs that we're able to offer next year at Heritage, but it will also impact the work of our professional staff members. Thank you in advance for your attendance. And now, if there's someone near you on Zoom, please stay. You'll be part of the meeting as well. If there's someone near you, please join hands with that person, so long as you're both comfortable doing so. And if you're here in the sanctuary, we invite you to make a circle around this sacred space as we prepare to say our traditional Heritage Church benediction. Did you catch what I tried to do there? It was pull somebody out into the circle. All right, I need to be in here. Actually, I need to be over here.
There you go.
Because this is a mic. You got this mic on, Kevin? All right. May the Spirit of life, that each of us possesses, flow from one to the other. May it stay with us. And bring us peace and harmony. Until we meet again. Amen.
Amen.